My informative speech is about rent control. Rent control, is it a crisis or is it reality? Many have believed that rent control is a crisis, but as time goes by, it has become a reality. The majority of persons' income goes to the cost of rent. Rent control is an act that controlled by the government. The act places a limit on what a landlord can ask for or if it's renewing a lease. It enables low income residents to afford to pay rent. Rent would not be raised and will be kept at a fair price. I am very interested in this topic because I am into the real estate industry. Landlords pass the line when it comes to raising the rent. Landlords take advantage of their tenants because they want to make money by increasing the rent. Sadly, the cities that we all live in don't have rent control, so families have more problems. A majority of people have an idea what exactly have no idea what rent control is and the purpose of why it was created. Rent control is a key to stability for many low income people. My main points that I will be talking about how rent control was formed, what was created because of rent control, and how it affects on the people. So main point one, to begin with, rent control has been around since before many of us can remember. Rent control has been around since World War One and World War Two, from 1919 from to 1924. A considerable amount of cities and states approved rent and dispossession law. Richard Nixon adapted to the law in many cities or counties with a vast population that was reintroduced, such as San Francisco, New York, Washington, California, and Oakland. California was a hefty supplement to this rent control during the time, and until this day, the U.S. did not immediately adapt rent control laws until after. According to the Urban Institute, the first laws in the U.S. were adopted in the 1920s and they gained the prominence over the next few decades, but not all the states incorporate rent control. The American Prospect States in the Oregon became the first state to adopt rent control. Rent control allows landlords to raise rent to a certain extent and particular time, which, if you think about it, it's fair because without rent control, rent would go up as much as it wants to. Rent control is a program created to help low-income people pay for rent in a manageable way. There has always been a 30% rent rule that connects to how much your income and what should be spent. The purpose of 30% rule is the only 30% of one's income should be spent on housing costs, but that was always been so certain. And my main point too, now that I have shared the history of rent control, I will now further into what was created and formed because of rent control. Many acts followed after rent control, and an act that indeed connects to rent control would be the Costa Hawkins Rental Act, which was created in 1995. This act was done after rent control started circulating. The Costa Hawkins Rent Act was created in California. The purpose of the act bans rent control on single family homes, condos, and new buildings constructed after 1995. According to tenants together, these landlords have the freedom to raise the rent at whatever amount they want. When this act was created, it made the rent percentage even higher. Another measure that has been up for debate for a while is Proposition 10. Proposition 10 is a state law that would continue to keep on putting a limit on house renting and counties and cities. The article Proposition 10 states renters in California typical pay 50% for more housing than renters in other states. In some parts of the state, rent costs are more than double the national average. In many parts, rental is ridiculously overpriced. California is one of the highest paying states for rent in all of the US, which is precisely why rent control is implicated for tenants. And my last point, three. Last but not least, in the article American Homeless Victims of Rent Control explaining the rent control appears to explain why certain major cities on the east and west coast, Boston, New York, Washington, Los Angeles, and San Francisco have experienced incoherently high homeless population in the recent years. In the article, it states homelessness is a big problem. There is a lot of homeless now than there was before due to rent control. The two significant parts that I have seen are San Francisco and Los Angeles. I am sure that there are other places, but those are the two major ones. If government passed rent control in the US, there would be less than 10% of homeless, which is a big improvement. And that's my conclusion. Rent control has always been a problem, knowing that rent gets higher and higher. Rent control has been around for many years but has not passed. Rent control will help out everyone, whether they live in different cities and states. It helps people living in rent controlled homes because of homes it's not controlled. It would be a massive crisis for families and college students, knowing that parents don't have considerable income together. They wouldn't have enough for other things they need to pay, bills, buying groceries, and supporting their family. When it affects students, it's because they are working and going to school at the same time. So that's very tough. And not just that, they can't study, they can't go out to do projects, and they are pretty much late for doing the assignments. On the other, it also affects elderlies because they are not to be working because they are 60 and 70, so that's overaged, and they just can't work, and that's bad for them because they don't have money saved, and they are taken to elderly